minutes to great. Yes, so from last time. Well, first I wanted to ask you about, well, I mean, I think that this we can do it at the end, but regarding the agendas and everything, because it's quite complex.
Yes.
Yes, quite complex.
Let's do that.
Yes, so the only two options that Professor Hans has are those Mondays.
Mm-hmm. I'm
And
okay on Mondays if I'm not teaching. That's the only thing.
yes, so I spoke with Yolanda, she said that there's no other availability than from 11 to 12.
All right.
So the option,
So what date would it be? 10 or 17?
the 17. There's a possibility for the 24th, I guess.
Yeah, the 24th would be better in the sense that so on the 17th I really have to be there because I have
Yes.
a PhD that has to teach, so I need to be present there. So for me, preferably on
The
the 24th,
24th,
I
okay.
have the entire day, which on the Monday I have no problem.
Okay, so then the
That would be-
24th February,
Yeah,
and okay, so I'm gonna see later today then, and I'll
check
also,
whether it
yes.
works. Yeah,
Yes.
it's horrible. I'm going to reserve it now, the entire day
Yes,
for you,
thank
so
you.
that you all know that.
I'll let you know as soon as
Sure,
I
I can
have.
imagine. But I'll
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, so that is it. Regarding modeling our system and okay, so I have like a minute of the things that we agreed that day, but
Does it still make sense?
yeah, not a lot of it. It's true. It changes so quickly.
That's the whole point, yeah.
But I think I found a solution, and I want to tell you about it.
Sure.
That, and also I sort of like made an adaptation. I'm gonna send you this version.
Very good.
But I would like to also get the last version from you, if that were possible.
The last version, you mean with comments for me?
Yes.
That I
would
didn't
be-
send to you?
Yes.
Yes.
That is.
Yes, because I did.
Right.
I had read it.
Yep, okay, so.
Continue, because otherwise
Yes.
I will...
So, what I found that could be done in regards to.
Ik heb het gezien, Bartel, dankjewel. Dankjewel, ik heb het gezien, dank je. Fantastisch. Succes.
So, what I think could work is the following. I'm just going to show you the methodology that I'm proposing, and for the new document, that's the biggest change that.
Sure.
I have it here.
Thesis.
Yes.
Maurice Angelo, right?
Yes.
I have it here. So yes, I have. Okay. So
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Share.
Sure.
Save to cloud.
So, what I am intending to do is a tornado graph with Bayesian networks. So,
Sure.
it sounds
Whatever
super
you
weird.
If you want to do that,
Yes.
it's fine on me.
No.
Don't forget to brush your teeth as well, because it sounds very dangerous.
Yeah, it does. So where am I taking it from? So I was looking for options to sort of like
Bayesian. Okay.
yes, to
Cool.
sort of like yield some results that I could use for later strategies that were quantifiable or not
Mhm.
quantifiable, because it's going to be very complex in my case,
Mm-hmm.
but something that could give me some idea of the hierarchy of those factors, or how to organize them and how to deal with them and all that. So I found several sort of like studies on that.
Right.
And particularly in infrastructure, they analyze risks that is slightly different, I guess, but it's also factors of analysis. So as we commented last time, I'm going to have drivers and barriers,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, they are factors for me, and I'm just going to make them with parameters.
Yes.
And so my proposal of the methodology is that I will, these are the questions. So what are the possible barriers and drivers for private investment? Can the knowledge from other fields of study apply to this research? It's just the literature review and bringing concepts that might apply to that area. What factors can be confirmed to be determining in the private investment in nature-based solutions? That is going to be done through the cases. Like I have some interviews that we conducted. So, and also what is the the relationship or causality between those factors? So, is there a combination of factors that? So that has to do with the fact that, as we said last time, so instead of like being just like a homogeneous random stuff, it's gonna be more of a relational
clusters of factors can be related to each other, which result in a certain path that will result in a certain type of development of
So while at the beginning I'm gonna I don't know this, I'm just doubting it, but like with a little bit of ground theory method, I'm just gonna like do these families and coding, but a very simple one. I'm gonna and those are gonna remain, but then I'm gonna do like they call it customization to the process, and it's about.
I could imagine that you could identify clusters.
Yes.
I could also imagine that based upon the interview results, you would get a little bit further than the clusters and get an idea of the interrelationships.
Yes. The causality, and also I would like to explore whether they are like a little bit like applying the asset management vision, sort of like determine or detect those factors that are more important in certain life cycle phases. So that's also something interesting that could go to the strategy design.
Yes.
And which are the domains of influence? That's how I'm calling the big clusters.
Those different things that we identified which are important,
are affected by the barriers and drivers of private. And then, so in that first stage, with literature review cases and the GRAM methodology, I'm gonna get barriers and drivers repository that is expert validated and categorized, no? And then for the second part, that sounds the dangerous part, sort of. So what they do is actually, so it's a little bit of systems analysis, and they do not only causality but probability. And at the end, helped by some software and some very basic probability, they calculate which one is the most important for the whole system, for what they call an output function. What this means is that they want to, like for instance in this case, their priority, I guess it's performance, right? So they are saying what factor affects performance. So what they do is that they model it, they customize it. So probability of event, how much, how often or how probable do you think I don't know, the type of contract affects the performance of blah, blah, blah. And that's done by them, by literature and interviews. After they have done the whole model, then they start taking factor by factor. Like they take this factor and then they sort of like compute the probability of failure in their system. That in my case would be no private investment.
Exactly. It's basically 0-1, right?
Exactly.
Or are you going to identify something in between?
They
like
did
a
some
0.7 chance of.
Yes, they are doing. I mean, this is also. I mean, of course, it gives a juice to the research in terms of like they do this sort of like segments, like from 0 to 15, from 15 to and then they put these random like super weird numbers. that could be interesting. I could do it. It's not like super complex.
Okay.
Um,
Let's see if we can work with a range or whether we should be binary.
mhm,
Because I
exactly.
think the binary element, if it is a first try at such a method,
Yes.
why go very complex, and
Yes.
you could do binary as well.
And also the whole complex, like for instance, they have, I don't know, like this is their whole system.
Right.
And I have 250, so it's gonna be like, it's much better for me if I simplify in
As
those
simple as
terms.
possible.
Yes. So that, and then after they do that, they get like like the tornado flag graph they call. So it's just like which are the factors that are most
Cool.
important,
Yes,
and
sure.
it looks cool.
Yeah.
And then in that sense, then I have to sort of like take all those. I have to honestly to design very well like the results that I'm gonna get, like and so see how those can be used to be used in a decision making toolbox or
Yeah,
something.
so there's two ways to go about it. So first of all, the clustering would help you to identify, because I think to really study what you would do, how to solve it, would be to focus on, I think, maybe one or two clusters. I think that would be best. Otherwise it will be way out of hand probably. And that means that your clustering would be sort of a help, because that would identify the drivers and barriers, and the drivers and barriers and the combined elements of those drivers and barriers would be very close to what you would have to say, okay, these are all factors that are interrelated that I need to change somehow in order to overcome the fact that we have this barrier, and we think this is the most important one. So I think that would work. And that means that your sort of system analysis of sort of from an institutional point of not institutional point of view, from a governance point of view, you would get this analysis like, okay, what does the system look like, and how does this system compare with these factors that I've identified in my cluster? Because those are sort of, you need to have an idea what this cluster sort of represents if I look at the overall governance context.
Yes.
Because if you want to change one thing, maybe you want to change other things as well,
Yes.
because they're interrelated. So you need to do an analysis like that, and then you can go and think about the changing of these designs, of the governance designs, and how can we help you there? Maybe I need to send you some of my slides from my course. First of all, you have to give me your email address, because I have the first version sending up here, but I can't get it actually. What is your email address? I have so many people starting with an M that I don't
yes.
know.
It's wait. I'm gonna get it from my cell phone. I don't know it because it has like a weird one in the middle. I don't know why.
Probably. So you're not the first Maurice then.
But that's weird for me because I've never met another Marisa in my life. So.
Well, they do it in last name.
Should I send you a mail so you have
Could be.
like a hi mail?
Otherwise I couldn't read it probably. I will waste your time. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay, my mail.
Maurice Angelo
Yes.
Lopez, that's the one. I have
With
it now.
a one at the end, I think
I
it's.
think I can copy now.
Yes.
So, okay, I will send it to you. Sorry about this
No.
interruption.
No, that. So and those are about the governance.
Yeah, let me try to send you stuff about how to deal with that, because basically what you need to do is you first need to get an overview of what this whole system looks like before you start tinkering around with changing one of these things, because you need to understand how everything is related to everything else.
Yes.
And your model assumes that there's a correlation if you want to change them to overcome this barrier.
Yes.
But the governance system, as a whole may have other types of interdependencies between these various
okay.
factors
Yes.
that may be affecting. So if
Okay.
I want to change, so if I want to do something about the wealth of women, yes, I can do something about, say, education, but then I also need to do something about income, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes. Instead of being like, yeah, I get it. Like instead of focusing in one, probably like sort of like taking the thread out, it's gonna bring other threads out as well. Mhm.
Exactly, because they're all interrelated, and we
Yes.
need to figure out how that works. And some of them may particularly work very well, considering your model of what the impact would be for the drivers and barriers for the getting of private finance. But the
Yes.
other ones may be equally problematic in terms of they may be very dependent on another variable that is not directly responsible, but it is very important for this governance system. So
Okay,
that's where the
okay.
complexity comes in.
Okay, that's good.
If you understand what I mean.
Yes.
So we need to do a sort of type of analysis like that.
Mhm.
I think the closely comes to how you dealt with it in the course by Martijn Leijten,
Mhm.
where you were also asked to sort of think about I think you also had to prepare a solution for a type of design
Is it
problem.
process or
yeah,
process
I
management?
think the process management.
Yes, we had to do. Yeah, there were some.
Try to remember that, because I think it's sort of the similar thing
Yes. Okay.
in a bigger and maybe even more advanced way.
Yes.
But think about the tooling that also Martijn Leijten has
Yes.
taught you, because you can do a strength weakness analysis, sort of the type of analysis, the actor
Mhm.
analysis, which should
No.
should really go in depth.
Yes.
And then we get to an idea of what this governance context looks like.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna check that toolbox then as well.
Yeah.
Another comment that I wanted to do is that from the first like literature review, I'm already gonna have sort of like a draft of the hypothesized system.
Yes.
And then with
Of
the
course,
cases,
you can validate that.
I'm gonna do them again for each one of the two cases, and that's how I'm gonna get the causality.
Yeah.
Yes.
That may work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. I mean, at some point you have to start working with. This is the model. You have to get through this
Yes.
in order to do the real work. Because if you get stuck there too much,
Yes, it's
I would
yes.
say it's not sort of.
feasible. I
helpful.
mean, I'm already trying to do
Yeah. Right.
one of them, but yeah. So that's the solution I found.
Okay.
I don't know how fit or
Well, if it's a solution, I mean, if they seem to be able to allow it for them to actually get an idea of what works or what doesn't work, to get an idea of the magnitude of the driver and barrier, because that's basically why you're using it. Basically,
Yes,
it's
yes.
a tool to only to get is it important or not. That's
Yes.
basically all what you need
Yes.
it for.
Mhm.
I would say it's a small step in your line of argumentation, so get through with it. If you think that's a valid way of doing that, then that's fine by me. I really am.
I mean,
very-
I found this process just because, like, it's not only to not to make it like super complex, but I wanted to
No, I think it's nice.
sort of like in this process that we were talking last time about how we could translate from all these factors to
Yes,
something meaningful
yes.
to like again
I like it. I like the idea, and especially the clustering element in there.
yeah, and that could be super insightful, I think.
That could be. Yeah, that could very well be. I'm trying to get access to my templates. But let's
Yes.
see.
I have to be very strict in several things, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, literature, like there's a lot of, I think, methodologies that I'm trying to put in there.
Yes.
So, like the literature review, the cases. So that's,
We haven't talked about the cases yet.
yeah, so that's,
That's another thing.
yeah, and I know because, I mean, I'm constrained by the, I mean, there's this argument that I think I have in favor, but I don't know. Since nature-based solutions are like hardly implementable
Mhm.
sometimes, like there's not a lot of like reality cases.
Right.
The fact that I have 2 of them and
I think 2 is
It-
more than enough.
yes.
I don't care if it's 1 or 6. I really don't. So
And
think
I
two is
also
okay.
wanted to ask you about the interviews, the representative sample.
Okay. Why do you want it to be a representative sample?
I mean, I don't want it. I don't want it to be, because then that
It
would mean
doesn't necessarily
200,
have to be.
and I cannot do this.
It doesn't necessarily have to be. So
Mhm.
I think about it. So usually people think about case studies and the results that you get there, or even how you use them, because they need to be representable for the entire set of cases. So you assume statistical representation.
Yes.
But a case study is never about statistical
Yes.
representation.
Okay.
It's getting a first step of how this complex world works. So then you get to whom within my case should I interview, and again then you would have to be very select, because you are trying to reconstruct how the world of this case actually works. That's why you need those interviews, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
you need those interviews only to get your picture of what is this governance context and what are these elements and how can I understand them.
Yes.
That's the only reason why you want these interviews. If you could do without it, then that's also fine. You just study the literature, but it's basically almost impossible because they need to give you some information.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of it's not institutionalized, but like formal
Yes.
literature on the
So
matter.
there's two ways to go about it. So if you do sort of an idea, like you say, okay, I want to get to understand this world. One simple rule of thumb could be, I'm going to go on interviewing people until I'm satisfied that I have the complete system.
That it's repeating some
A repetitive answer, so I don't get new
Yeah.
things anymore. That's the first rule of thumb. And it can be one, can be like 20 interviews, so that would be one. The other one would say, I'm going to get a minimum number of people that I think would give me a sufficient overview without going too much in depth of what is going on, which represents sort of the essence of what I want to know. And then it's not about statistical representation, but it's like, okay, have I covered the entire case from left to right, from top to bottom? Have I got it
the
sort of under
concentration.
control? Yeah.
Okay.
And you can argue your way around it and say, like, I need like these types of people with this type of knowledge about these types of processes, and then I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So you could basically argue your way out of that.
Okay, so yeah, that's something good, I guess, because I was just concerned about
Yeah, so don't
having
worry
too
about
many
numbers.
factors and
Yes.
too many interviews and all that.
No, because you're not asking them about the factors. You're asking the whole
The
focus
main-
is going to be on sort of the identification of these of how this system works. So you're not
Yeah.
interested in the factors. The factors are sort of drawn from what you have analyzed from this literature and your very fancy Bayesian blah 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 blah, right?
Yes.
So the only reason why you would want those interviews is to get a better idea of what this complex system looks like and how it actually functions and how normally, if you were to get a project realized, how that works. They would have to tell you how that functions,
Okay, yeah,
right?
yes. I also,
And of course you can then talk how hypothetically, of course, in these interviews about what would you do if you would do a nature-based solution and how would that alter things, because that would probably be insightful for them.
Yes.
Because you get an idea from them, like, okay, yeah, it's very different because we do it now like this, and that would create problems because of this, and that would be then they would indicate that is a potential factor, that is a barrier, and then you can connect that to, like, okay, well, how does that look like in my list?
Okay, but then it would, like, I'm having sort of like a question in regards to the private investment aspect of it. So I'm gonna be able to involve a lot of experts from several areas, including, I guess, experts for like private finance and everything.
I think they will be sort of,
Yes, but then what I'm having problem with is how. So the interviews are gonna tell me how the system works and which could be the red spots to handle. but then I'm also gonna have to sort of like focus them in terms of like, hey, for private investment, not in general in the universe, right?
Yes, you really have to focus them. So that's the core of your interview.
Yes.
Because we're not interested in the engineering elements that are difficult about this.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
we're only interested in private. So you have to ask people about them.
Yes.
So usually what I think would be the type of respondents that you would need is first of all, sufficient people on the backside of a project.
Yeah.
So in the financing part.
Yes.
So banks, financiers, whatever. From the project perspective, those who have a very important link with this finance element. So usually project managers, probably there would be a financial expert involved. Usually from the mother company of the asset owner, like somebody who actually keeps tab of how do we
life
get
cycle,
stuff like that. Sort of those who have a responsibility for the planning of those things and to make sure that they have enough money, because basically private finance is just another way of spreading your risk and spreading what you have to pay as a public entity. So somehow these two have to be connected. So in the back office of the asset owner or of the organization who is dealing with those infrastructures, there would be somebody who would say, well, we cannot go on and have too many private investors because otherwise our risk will be too great, or we have other types of problems.
Exactly.
Those would be the types of people that I think are most important to talk about.
Yes.
To talk to, sorry. So that part.
That part I'm gonna
So you
scope
need
it.
to, yes, that needs scope.
I changed also, I wanted to comment on, I changed the sort of like the sub-questions a little bit. So which type of nature-based solution faces the biggest challenge? So this is to scope down, as I mentioned last time, and it's done already on a certain type of nature-based solution.
Sure.
And aside from the already like the categorization that I already did, I have it here. I want to also
You can also focus on one.
focus on one, and I'm
Just
gonna do that
start with
through.
that. So you can say, I'm starting with this choice,
Yes.
starting from my research. So instead of what type, I first need to figure that out. I'm going for this one.
Like this, like
It doesn't matter.
I mean,
because the real trouble in the work is doing the other stuff.
yes. Okay.
That's enough.
So that's.
but
I mean, I already did some segregation, and now I wanted to do it like a little bit, less tolerant, sort of say, and say pick one of them, or according to the cases that I have, of course.
Cool.
Which are the different investor profiles commonly involved in the implementation of nature-based solution, and which is the one that is going to be prioritized. What I mean is that it's a different set of priorities and criteria when we're talking about a bank, for instance, that has only in their mind like revenue in time, and that's it.
Right.
And for instance an institutional investor that might be interested as well in the
Sure.
Yeah.
Sustainable development goals.
Yes, exactly. The goals. So
Yeah.
So also do sort of like the same, a categorization, and say we're not gonna only go with this profile, but only like do an investor profile segregation to check what.
I completely agree. But is it really a research question that you want to take care of that? Because you already know the outcome. There's basically two different types of private investors: the ones that
you're
really
right.
go for the money, and the ones that don't.
Yes, you're right. It's only you're right. Okay.
So really try to be critical about what it is that you really need to know, because it will save you lots of time.
Yeah.
Because you already know the answer.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm just what are the drivers and barriers for private investment, and which in other related fields that's literature review? What is the relationship, causality between those factors? What is the probability of each factor influencing the private investment? This is the same as this one, I think. Done per factor. What barriers and drivers can be confirmed to be crucial in the decision making? So that's the hierarchization process. And a sub question of that is like, are they concentrated in any life cycle, or is there another like a clustering feature that could be used? And how can knowledge extracted from the factors help to furnish a decision-making tool that enhances the implementation of nature-based solutions in the future?
Yeah, the final thing, whether it's a decision-making tool, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, me neither. I'm just like a strategy. I don't know, like
How can the knowledge extracted from development help to furnish? Yeah, I think strategy would be better. Yeah.
Insightful strategy, or yeah. So that is those are the questions that I am.
Yeah,
gonna
and it's already. I mean, even 8 is too big for a master thesis.
Yeah.
So usually I would say go for 3 or 4. So
Yes.
try to see if you can.
So I already have 6 because these 2 are
So that's even
repetitive.
better, but try to see if you can get hierarchy in there and see which is the key one which I need to know, and there's other ones which are fairly related to them, but I don't see them as separate steps.
Yeah, so instead of like dividing the...
Because usually this is a chapter, right? Every
Yes.
sub-question, every research question is at least a chapter.
Yeah, I mean, maybe probability and causality are the same.
Yeah, or it should be
Okay.
part of addressed in the same chapter
Mhm.
where you actually employ different types of methods, and you immediately see, okay, they should go less in depth because we need to cluster together already. So you already get an idea of the priority where the focus of your research lies. That's the whole idea of these research questions, right?
Yes.
And try to figure out whether they're really
Well written and clear. Or
yeah, well, I think the way we're cutting right now, what's the relationship between
Yeah.
the factors?
Causality for
I
me.
would say that's part of this analysis, right?
Yeah.
So this one would be sub-related to this one. So you
Mhm.
could say this is my key thing, and of
Mhm.
course, if I'm going to do this, of course, I'm also going to pay attention to
Yes.
relationships.
Yes.
See?
Yeah, and I feel, well, it's not that I feel what I feel it matters, but just like causality is just like a strong word.
Yes.
So it implies that I'm gonna have to. So I am gonna be soft on that, and that's why I wanted to put relationship instead of causality. But
The softer word is correlation.
correlation. Yeah, that's yeah.
In my book.
Yes.
And basically that implies also that you don't know sort of
Exact. Yes. I have an idea, but not like.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's basically how I sort of reorganized
Yeah.
everything, and
I think you're on the right track. I think you
Mhm.
should reduce, if possible, reduce even more or make choices.
yeah.
Like I said with the first research question, I think making a choice and just go for one of the nature-based solutions that is out there that you feel is the most important one, or that you have the most information about, or that your stakeholders think is most important, or that your company supervisor thinks is the most important. Just go for it, because that's not our main focus. Because
Yeah.
if you go through this, we can do it for every type of nature-based solution.
Exactly. So yes. So yeah. It's not important to do everything at the same